At midnight, when the world falls silent, an old hospital breathes with secrets. Its halls echo with the whispers of those who never left, their shadows flickering just beyond your sight. For one nurse, gifted or cursed with the ability to see the dead, every shift is a descent into terror. Are you brave enough to walk these haunted corridors and face what lurks in the dark? Dive into this chilling tale, and if you crave more stories to keep you awake, hit subscribe on our YouTube channel. Join the nightmare now. Chapter 1. The Curse I Carry. My name is Jill, and I'm a nurse at St. Agnes Hospital, a crumbling relic tucked away in a forgotten corner of a small provincial town. The building itself is old, built back in the early 1900s, with creaking floors and walls that seem to hold onto the echoes of pain and loss from generations past. Every time I walk through its doors, I feel the weight of history pressing down on me. But it's not just the architecture that's heavy, it's the unseen residents that make my job a living nightmare. Since I was a kid, I've seen things no one else can. It started small, a shadow in the corner of my bedroom that didn't belong, a whisper in the wind that sounded like my name, or a face peering back from the mirror that wasn't mine. My parents thought it was my imagination at first, the overactive mind of a child who read too many ghost stories. But as the visions grew stronger, they took me to doctors, therapists, even a priest. Nothing helped. They called it the third eye, a so-called gift that's been more like a chain around my soul, dragging me into a world where the dead don't rest easy. I just call them the others. Ghosts, spirits, or something darker, always hovering at the edge of my world, waiting for a moment of weakness to make themselves known. Some are harmless, lost souls who wander aimlessly, their faces etched with confusion or sadness. Others are mischievous, knocking over objects or flickering lights to get a reaction. But the worst are the ones with malice, their eyes burning with hatred, their presence like a cold knife twisting in your gut. When I was little, these visions sent me running to my mum, screaming about the cold hands that touched me in the dark, or the figures that stood at the foot of my bed, watching me sleep. She'd hold me tight, whispering that it was just a bad dream. But I knew better. As I grew older, I learned to live with them, like you'd live with a limp or a scar that never fully heals. I'd avoid certain places, old houses, graveyards, anywhere the veil between worlds felt thin, and focus on the living. That's why I became a nurse, to help people who were still here, still fighting. By the time I started at St. Agnes, I thought I'd seen it all. Kind spirits who lingered with sad smiles, pranksters who knocked over cups in the kitchen, even those with a malice that made my skin crawl and my heart race. I was wrong. This hospital wasn't just a place to heal the living, it was a prison for the dead, a crossroads where souls got trapped, unable to move on. The air here was always thick, charged with an energy that made my third eye throb like a migraine, and my first night would drag me into their world deeper than I'd ever gone before, forcing me to confront not just the ghosts, but the darkness within myself. Chapter 2. The Stranger at the Gate. It was a sticky, suffocating evening, the kind where the air feels like it's watching you, heavy with the promise of a storm that never breaks. St. Agnes loomed ahead, its faded bricks glowing faintly under a sickly moon that cast long, twisted shadows across the parking lot. The hospital had been standing for over a century, and it showed peeling paint, rusted railings, and windows that stared back like empty eyes. My stomach twisted. not just from first-day jitters, but from the dread of what I might see lurking in those shadows. As I reached the entrance, an old man shuffled toward me from the dim light of the street lamp. His coat was ragged, threadbare at the elbows, and his steps were too heavy for the living, each one echoing unnaturally on the concrete. Our shoulders brushed as we passed, a slight collision that should have been nothing, but it sent a jolt through me. I mumbled, "Sorry," reaching instinctively to steady him, worried he might fall. But my hands passed through a cold, thick fog, like dipping them into a frozen lake in the dead of winter. The chills seeped into my bones, making me gasp. My heart stopped for a beat. I turned slowly, afraid of what I'd find, my mind racing with possibilities. He was a few steps away, but he paused, his head turning with a deliberate slowness to lock eyes with me. Those eyes, empty, hollow, like staring into a well with no bottom, held me frozen in place. They weren't just dark, they were voids, sucking in the light around them, filled with a sorrow that seemed to reach out and wrap around my throat. Time seemed to stretch, the world fading into a low hum as his gaze pinned me, searching my soul for something I didn't understand. I tore my eyes away, my pulse pounding in my ears, too scared to look back immediately. My breath came in short, sharp bursts, and I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. When I finally gathered the courage to glance back, he was gone, the doorway empty, as if he'd never been there at all, just a trick of the light or my overactive imagination. But I knew better. The cold lingered on my skin, a reminder that he was real, or at least as real as the others could be. "Jill, you okay?" Zach's voice snapped me out of it, pulling me back to the present. My best friend since childhood, now a nurse here too, stood beside me, his brow furrowed with concern. We'd grown up together, sharing secrets and adventures, and he was one of the few who knew about my third eye. We'd spent our summers swapping ghost stories around campfires, laughing at the ones that scared us the most. But this wasn't a story. This was real. I managed a weak laugh, clutching my bag like a shield against the unknown. "Just thought I'd forgotten my water bottle." I lied, not ready to dive into the truth just yet. Zach gave me a skeptical look but didn't press. He knew when to back off. As we walked inside, I couldn't shake the feeling that the old man's eyes were still on me, watching from somewhere just out of sight. Chapter 3. The hospital's pulse. The lobby of St. Agnes was dim and unwelcoming, its flickering fluorescent lights casting jagged shadows on the worn linoleum floors that had seen too many hurried footsteps. The air smelled of antiseptic and something older, like dust and decay, a scent that clung to your clothes long after you left. As I stepped inside, a chill wrapped around me, not from the air conditioning, but from something deeper, like the hospital itself was alive and breathing, its pulse slow and labored. I grabbed Zach's arm without thinking, my fingers digging in as a wave of sensations hit me, the familiar tingle of my third eye opening wider. "They're here, Zach. A lot of them," I whispered, my voice barely above a whisper, afraid that speaking louder might summon them. He didn't laugh or roll his eyes. Instead, his eyes tightened with worry. "It's a hospital, Jill. People die here every day. What did you expect?" His voice was light, trying to ease the tension, but I caught the unease in it, the way his shoulders tensed. He was right. Hospitals are where life and death tangle in a messy knot, and St. Agnes, with its long history of tragedies, epidemics, accidents, quiet passings in the night, felt like a magnet for the departed. I'd been here before for training shifts, learning the ropes of charting patients and administering meds. But that night, the air was thick with something else, like the spirits knew I could see them and were waiting to be noticed, their energies pressing in from all sides. The old man's face stuck with me, his hollow eyes burning in my mind like a brand. I tried to push it aside, focusing on the routine, checking in at the nurse's station, reviewing patient charts, but it was no use. I saw him again that night, standing outside the emergency room, his figure silhouetted against the harsh lights, staring into the distance as if waiting for someone who'd never show up. His posture was slumped, defeated, but there was a determination in his stance that made me pause. I hurried past, eyes on the floor, pretending he wasn't there, but I felt it. The cold seeping through my uniform, the weight of his gaze on my back, the undeniable truth that he wasn't human, not anymore. That first shift was a blur of activity, tending to patients, answering calls, but underneath it all was a constant hum of the unseen. A whisper here, a shadow there, small things that most would dismiss as fatigue or imagination, but I knew better. By the end of the night, I was exhausted, my third eye aching from the strain, and I couldn't wait to get home and close it all out. Chapter 4. The Silent Watcher. Weeks passed in a haze of shifts and sleepless nights, and the old man became a shadow I couldn't shake, a constant companion in the hospital's labyrinth of corridors. He appeared in the most unexpected places, by the stairwell, where the lights always flickered, near the pediatric ward, where children's laughter mixed with cries, even in the supply closet once, his figure half hidden behind stacks of linens. Always silent, always watching, his hollow eyes following me as I moved through my duties. I tried to throw myself into work, focusing on the living, adjusting IVs, comforting patients, charting vital signs with meticulous care. But his presence was like a splinter under my skin, irritating and impossible to ignore. It started affecting me, small things at first, like jumping at shadows or double-checking empty rooms, but it built up, wearing me down. Zach noticed, of course. He always did. We were in the break room one day, sipping bad coffee from styrofoam cups, when he finally called me out. "All right, Jill, what's going on?" he asked, his voice low but firm, his eyes searching mine. "You've been jumpy for weeks, like you're waiting for something to jump out at you." I hesitated, stirring my coffee longer than necessary, but I knew I couldn't keep it bottled up forever. I sighed and told him about the old man, the strange encounter at the entrance, his constant appearances, the way his eyes seemed to plead for something I didn't understand. Zach leaned back in his chair, thoughtful, running a hand through his hair. "Sounds like he's tied to this place," he said after a moment. "Maybe he's waiting for someone, a wife, a kid. Some ghosts can't move on until they settle something, like unfinished business or a message they need to deliver." "But why stay here?" I asked, my voice edged with frustration. "If he's a ghost, why not go find them? Why haunt this hospital?" Zach's face grew serious, his usual humor fading. "Not all ghosts can leave, Jill. Some are stuck where they died, chained by trauma or regret. Others are bound by something they didn't finish in life. And some—" He lowered his voice, glancing around as if the walls had ears. "Some are strong enough to touch things, move stuff, even hurt people if they're angry enough." His words sent a chill through me, raising goosebumps on my arms. The old man didn't seem dangerous. There was a sadness to him, a quiet desperation that made me pity him more than fear him. But the idea of ghosts with that kind of power, able to bridge the gap between worlds and affect the living unraveled my nerves. I'd heard stories, objects flying, scratches appearing from nowhere, but experiencing it was different. That night, I couldn't sleep, tossing and turning in my small apartment, the old man's face haunting my thoughts. I replayed our encounter over and over, wondering what he wanted, why he chose me. Part of me wanted to help, to ask what he needed and put him to rest, but fear kept me quiet. What if his need pulled me into an inescapable nightmare, something that would change me forever? I pulled the covers over my head, trying to block out the world, but the darkness only made the visions clearer. Chapter 5. The Shadow Strike. I tried to ignore the old man, sticking to my routine and avoiding the spots where he appeared most often. But something worse found me instead. It was a quiet afternoon. The hospital eerily still. The usual bustle muted as if the building itself was holding its breath. Zach and I were talking by the nurse's station, going over patient notes when something hit me. A force like a cold, angry wind slamming into my side. I stumbled, nearly falling into the counter as Zach grabbed my arm to steady me. "Jill, what was that? You okay?" My heart raced as I scanned the hallway, my breath coming in short gasps. "Something pushed me," I whispered, searching for the source, my third eye flaring with activity. The corridor was empty, no one in sight. But then I saw it, a wisp of black smoke, twisting and coiling like a living thing, slithering down the hall with unnatural speed. It moved with purpose, like it was hunting, and it vanished around a corner before I could react. Driven by a mix of fear and a desperate need to know what it was, I followed, my footsteps echoing too loudly in the silence. The hallway seemed longer than usual, the lights dimmer, and when I turned the corner, it was gone, like the hospital had swallowed it whole. I stood there, shaking, feeling exposed and vulnerable. Later that day, a child's cry broke the silence, shrill and terrified. I rushed to a room where a little girl, maybe 4 years old, was sobbing uncontrollably, her small body shaking as she pointed at the door. Her mom looked helpless, stroking her hair and whispering comforts that did nothing to calm her. "She was fine just a minute ago," the mom said, her voice trembling. Then she started screaming about something out there, something scary. I glanced at the doorway and froze, my blood turning to ice. A hulking figure stood there, his face twisted with cruel delight, eyes burning into mine with a hatred that made my knees weak. He was massive, his form shimmering slightly at the edges, and there was something inhuman about him, like he was made of shadows and rage. I stepped back, my breath catching in my throat as he slipped into another room, quick as a shadow vanishing in light. I calmed the girl as best I could, promising her candy from the vending machine, my hands shaking as I spoke. Then I followed him, my pulse pounding in my ears, every step feeling like a march toward doom. The next room was a whirlwind of chaos. A teenage boy, admitted for a routine procedure to fix a broken arm, was gasping for air, his face turning blue, his monitor screaming alarms that pierced the air. Nurses and doctors rushed in, but I was already there, my training kicking in as I helped with CPR, compressions that felt futile against the invisible force that seemed to be choking him. We couldn't save him. His heart gave out, and as I stood there, tears streaming down my face mixing with sweat, I felt it again, that cold, heavy presence pressing in. The figure was gone, but his shadow lingered in the room, a promise of more pain to come, a darkness that had tasted blood and wanted more. Chapter 6. The Voice in the Dark. The night shift was a different kind of hell. one I wasn't prepared for. The hospital's halls grew darker as the sun set, the air thicker with an oppressive silence broken only by the occasional beep of a machine or the distant cough of a patient. Shadows stretched longer, hiding corners where anything could lurk, and the fluorescent lights buzzed like angry insects. I'd been moved to nights, away from Zach's reassuring presence, and the loneliness made every shadow feel alive, every creak a footstep from the beyond. The old man, who I'd learned was named Gregory through some digging in old records, died of a heart attack in the ER years ago, still appeared, his sad eyes following me. But it was the cruel figure, Kali, I called him, after the god of destruction, that haunted my every step. His presence was like a storm cloud, building pressure until it burst. One night, after a grueling shift of changing bedpans and monitoring vitals, I was heading back from a quick break in the cafeteria, the taste of stale coffee still on my tongue, when Kaylee blocked my path. The hallway was empty, the lights dim, and his form was solid now, more real than before, his eyes glinting with malice under the flicker. "I know you see me," he growled, his voice like nails on a chalkboard, low and rumbling, echoing in my head as much as in the air. I froze, my legs shaking, my mind racing. It was the first time a ghost had spoken to me directly, and the sound scraped at my soul, sending shivers down my spine. "Why do you hurt them?" I managed, my voice trembling, barely audible in the vast emptiness of the hall. "The patients, the kids. Why?" His laugh was sharp, like breaking glass, bouncing off the walls and piercing my ears. "Because it's fun. Their fear, it feeds me." He stepped closer, the air growing colder with each movement, and I backed away, my heart hammering against my ribs like it wanted to escape. Every step I took, he matched, his presence suffocating, the cold wrapping around me like a vice. I turned and ran, my footsteps echoing in the empty halls, panic fueling my legs, but he was relentless, appearing ahead of me, blocking every escape, his laugh following me like a curse. I ducked into a bathroom, the door slamming behind me, and locked myself in a stall, my hands trembling as I whispered prayers I hadn't said since childhood. The words tumbled out, a desperate shield against the dark, begging for protection from whatever evil pursued me. I closed my eyes, waiting for the cold to swallow me, for his hands to reach through the door, but it didn't come. When I finally opened my eyes and stepped out, the air was lighter, his presence gone, like a storm that had passed. But as I reached the door, an invisible hand gripped my throat, squeezing with a strength that made spots dance in my vision. I gasped, clawing at nothing, my nails digging into my own skin as I fought for air. "Let her go!" a voice barked, sharp and commanding. Cutting through the panic, the grip vanished suddenly and I collapsed to the floor, gasping for air, my throat burning. A janitor found me moments later, his face full of worry as he helped me up. "You okay, miss? Looked like you were choking on something." I nodded, my voice hoarse, my eyes darting around for Kaylee. He was gone, but I knew who'd saved me. Gregory, the old man, his quiet strength cutting through the darkness like a light in the storm. Chapter 7. The Healer and the Witch. I had to know more to understand the battle I'd been pulled into. I found Gregory near an exit at the end of the hall, facing Kali in a tense standoff that charged the air with energy. I hid behind a corner, my heart pounding in my chest, my breaths shallow as their voices carried through the hall, low and intense. "You were stopped once," Gregory said, his voice steady but firm, laced with a quiet authority that spoke of a life spent fighting darkness. Why do you torment the living even now? You belong in hell, where your kind festers." Kaylee's laugh was venomous, dripping with hatred. "Stopped? I'll never be stopped. I'll come back again and again, until my revenge is complete, until every soul feels the pain I endured." Their words painted a grim story, unfolding like a horror tale from the past. Gregory, a healer in life, had confronted Kaylee, a witch doctor who'd sacrificed an innocent child for money, hired by a vengeful woman seeking to destroy her rival's family. The ritual had gone wrong, the child's death sparking a chain of events that led to a confrontation where Gregory had used his own powers to banish the curse, but at a cost. Both men had died in the process, their spirits bound to the hospital where the boy had been treated. Their fight erupted then, a storm of ghostly energy that shook the air, making the lights flicker and the temperature drop. I watched, dizzy and terrified, as they clashed, their forms blurring in a whirlwind of light and shadow. Punches that passed through flesh, but sent waves of force rippling through the hall. It was like watching a movie, but real, the kind of battle that made your hair stand on end. Then, a thick black smoke rolled in from nowhere, cold and choking, filling the space with a stench of sulfur and decay. I coughed, covering my face with my sleeve, my eyes watering as Kaylee's scream tore through the air, a sound of pure torment, like a soul being ripped apart. When the smoke cleared, slowly dissipating into the vents, Gregory stood alone, his figure weary but resolute, his gaze finding mine in the dim light. I stepped forward, my legs unsteady, fear giving way to gratitude and curiosity. "Are you okay?" I asked, my voice shaky, echoing in the now silent hall. He nodded, his hollow eyes softening slightly. "Kaylee's gone. That smoke, it took him where he belongs, to the depths he deserves." I told him about our first meeting, about how Zach and I had dug into old records and learned he'd died of a heart attack in the emergency room, trying to save a patient. "I knew you saw me," he said softly, his voice like a gentle breeze. "But I felt your fear. I didn't want to scare you more, to drag you into this." "Why do you stay?" I asked, my curiosity overriding my fear. "You're always waiting, always looking out." He smiled faintly, a sad curve of his lips. "For her, my wife. I know she's coming, and I can't leave without her." Chapter 8. A Final Reunion. Days later, the hospital buzzed with urgency as an emergency call came in. An old woman, frail and gasping, rushed through the doors on a gurney. We fought to save her in the ER, the room filled with the beeps of machines and the shouts of doctors, adrenaline pumping as we performed CPR, defibrillated her heart and administered meds. She pulled through, barely, her weak body stabilized and moved to a room for recovery. The same room Gregory had lingered by so many times, staring at the door as if expecting someone. I checked her chart later, my hands trembling as I read the name. Her last name matched his, a confirmation that sent a chill down my spine. When I saw him again, standing by her bedside in the quiet room, the monitors beeping softly, he confirmed it with a nod. "My wife," he said, his voice heavy with love and loss, his ethereal hand hovering over hers as if he could touch her one last time. "I knew she'd come here, to this place, to me." He explained he'd been a healer, gifted with glimpses of the future, visions that came in dreams or flashes, enough to know they'd reunite in this hospital, their fates intertwined even in death. "What comes next?" he said, his eyes distant. "I don't know. Only God does. But we'll be together, at least for a moment." I watched them from the doorway, tears blurring my vision as his wife's condition worsened over the next few days. Her breathing grew labored, her skin paler, and one quiet night she passed, her hand slipping from the nurse's grasp. Their spirits stood together briefly, hand in hand, a soft glow around them as they exchanged words I couldn't hear. Then they vanished, fading into the light, leaving the room emptier than before. I like to think they found peace together in whatever lies beyond, free from the chains that bound them. Chapter 9. The Shadows Remain. St. Agnes is still a place of whispers and shadows, its halls filled with the echoes of lives cut short and souls unwilling to leave. I see other spirits now, some kind, like a young woman who smiles from the maternity ward, others not, their angry eyes following me as I pass. But I keep my distance, focusing on the living, on the small victories like a patient smile or a steady heartbeat. Kaylee's attack left a mark, not on my body but on my soul, a scar that aches on cold nights, a reminder of the darkness that lingers in places like this, waiting for a crack to slip through. Rumors spread among my co-workers that I'm crazy, talking to empty air or jumping at nothing. But I don't care. Zach knows the truth, and that's enough. He's my anchor in the storm. Every night, before my shift, I pray to keep the shadows at bay, to strengthen the veil between worlds. The third eye is a weight I'll always carry, a window to a world I never asked to see. But it's taught me something, to cherish the light, to hold on to the living. The hospital is quiet tonight, the patients sleeping, but I know they're out there, watching, waiting, forever tied to this place, their stories unfinished. The end of Jill's story leaves us with a haunting truth. Some burdens, like the third eye, can't be shed, but they can teach us resilience. In the face of fear, we find strength to keep moving forward, even when the shadows linger. Have you ever felt a presence you couldn't explain? Share your own eerie experiences in the comments on our YouTube channel. And don't forget to subscribe for more terrifying tales that will make you question what's watching from the dark.